Hello everyone, welcome to this behind the scenes devlog of my Ludum Dare game jam game, The Cube. So The Cube is a very basic game. It doesn't really adhere to the theme, but I just did it as an experiment with the HD render pipeline from Unity, which we can already see in action in this little diorama here. Okay, that was too fast, I'm sorry. There we go. So in this video I will kind of explain all of the different techniques like this shader, and I will talk about the procedural items that spawn in the world. Alright, so let's go to the actual world scene and let's spawn in a world. There we go. So we just spawned in the world. Let's pause it to make it a little bit better. Alright, so this is the world. And if I fly away, you can see that the actual terrain fades away from me. And that's basically due to the fact that this camera, which I operate here, gets too far away. So how does this happen? It's basically all because of the... that one needs to be fixed. That's basically all because of these materials. All of the materials have a very basic, or well, not basic. If you see the shaded graph, then you can see that it's all but basic. But they all use a very simple piece of code. Let me go into this foliage shader graph. They all use this particular set of code, which I can zoom in at. There we go. So this particular set of code, which reads the position of the actual vector, so that is vector, vertex. It reads the vertex of the mesh, and then it calculates the distance between the camera, which is our viewpoint. And then based on the distance, it will apply a dither effect. And then the dither effect is put into the clip threshold, which basically, if it is above the value of this alpha value, then it gets discarded. It isn't rendered anymore. So that's the very basic concept of this dither fading effect. So if we look at this pillar one, we can increase and decrease the value, and as you can see, the terrain fades away. So let's put it at 300 for all of the things. Alright, so now we can see the whole world. Apart from the water, which I forgot, we can see the whole world and how the actual, what it actually looks like without the render distance enabled. So first of all, you can see that the water is just a circular plane, because that's all that's needed. I don't need a very fancy water effect. I just have a plane with a depth or a density volume, which I will get to in a minute. But first the terrain. So if I zoom out way above, you can see, okay, now it starts to fade again. If I then resume the game and I start walking, you can see me walking and can see that the world is placing new chunks into the world. And this is done in such a way that if a chunk at the, in this case, if we walk in this direction, the chunks at the top of the screen, they actually get put into the front of the player. Just to make sure that the game still runs, and instead of constantly deleting and adding new items, which is it takes a lot of performance from Unity. So I just move the one that is behind the player in front of the player, and that ensures that the same amount of pillars, which I call these little needles, well, pillars, in the world, it ensures that they stay in the world and that they just get a different mesh and a different position. So I said that I changed the mesh. I changed the mesh for a lot of the different things, also the bush and the grass and trees and whatever. I just changed the mesh instead of instantiating, with that's how it's called in Unity, spawning a new pillar. I just changed the mesh because that is way more performant for Unity. Well, less performant, I guess. So that's also how what I do with the grass, which we will get to later. So what else can we see here? The water, yes. So let me grab the water. Here we go. So if I disable all of the things for the water, you can see that it is all empty. If I then just enable this water plane, well, that just looks really plain. Pun intended. So with this density volume, I create some depth. What is a density volume? Well, a density volume is basically just a box filled with fog. I guess that's the best explanation. So if I go down here, so this is a very dense fog, so you can see the transition. I can make the transition a lot better by doing this. And now you can see that the water, the density volume, adds some fog to it. It also does some volumetric lighting stuff, which I guess is nice, but I just don't use it. I just use a very dense volume and put it below the water level. And that way, both the transparent water plane and the density volume create this really nice depth effect. In an actual shippable game, you probably want a different solution, like a different water shader. But for this Game Jam game, it was a really fast way of getting this depth effect. One last thing in this world is the sun. So the sun is actually this white ball that is really bright. This white ball in the sky. Because the way that I use it is I use a gradient sky. And the gradient sky is basically the skybox. So as you can see, if I enable and disable it, the whole sky changes. And the gradient sky doesn't have a sun. So by just adding a sphere with a emissive texture, the bloom makes it seem like it is a sun from below, which is really nice. The clouds have a very basic shader, adding noise together and then clipping that noise to get these weird patterns, and there it moves really slowly, which is fine for my use case. If I probably wanted to ship this game, the clouds would be way different, but for this game jam, it was fine. So that is all of the things in this world, and then I will go into this little test world that I use to test all of the different things, like the tree. So here, this is the scene I used to test all of the different procedural foliage things. So this is the tree. If I press play, I can change the tree. if I set it up correctly. So there you go. And every time I press G on my keyboard, the tree changes. And that's basically how a tree changes. No kidding. The tree has a lot of different elements. It has 2 different trunks, which is really hard to see, but this trunk, for example, it twists a little bit. And then this trunk doesn't. So that is a really small thing. And there are also different leaves. So you have these really tall ones. And then you have these smaller twisted ones. There are also these tall variants of the twisted ones. And then there is this straight variant of the smaller ones. And they can get used in combination with each other. And then there is this branch. So the branch is basically just this a straight corner, and then it just gets placed. It slaps a different leaf on top of it, and then it basically adds more branches to it. Yeah. So there is a total of 4 branches it can have, I guess. Let me have a look. Yes, 4 branches, and it picks one at random. Or it picks an amount at random. Well, not really random. It's all based on the position of the pillar in the world. But so that's how all of the different seeds are constantly the same. So that's how the tree gets made procedurally. Just a different trunk, different leaves, different branches. And again, all those branches also have different leaves. So that's the tree. Then we have the grass, which is kind of the same principle. But, I mean, it's smaller, it is grass. So every time it picks, for every single pillar, it picks a random amount of these grasses. And then it just places them at random. That's basically it for the grass. I don't really know what to add there. They are 3D, kind of. And they also have like a little swaying animation. Shader thing. It's in a shader. All of the swaying in the wind kind of things are made in shader. That is just for performance. Because rigging all of them and having giving all of the objects a skinned mesh renderer, it is really demanding. But by just doing it in the shader, it is way better. Then we have the rocks, which are a little bit bigger. So these rocks, they can vary in shape. If I hook it up correctly. They can vary in shape, and they also have a different mesh. So sometimes there is this red on top, sometimes there isn't. If there is red on top, then if it is big enough, it just decides how many of these grass things are on top. It can be 0, can be 4, as you can see here. I guess 4? Oh no, it can actually be 6. So it just picks it at random, places them on top, and that's how these rocks are generated. Yeah, it's not really that hard if you know it. Maybe some people have questions about it. If you have some questions about all of this procedural stuff, just head into the Discord and just ask. Just ask whatever you want to know. I am very happy to help all of you. Then for the bushes, which can have these orbs, which are the currency in the game, or the food for the cube. These can be generated. They all generate in a different, with a different size. So here you can see there is this big one, and then there is this smaller one over here. And then basically you have these different leaves for the bush. They get placed in the different radius, I guess that's how you can call it. And then sometimes it adds a little flower. I called it a flower, yeah. I just place a flower on top, and that flower then spawns a orb. And the orb, again, can be of different sizes. Based on the size of the orb, it has a higher value. So if you find a lot of bigger orbs, then you can fill up the cube a lot more, faster. Which is a nice hint for the people who don't know. So that is the bush, and those are all of the procedural elements. Yes, trees, grass, bush, rocks, cover them all. Yes, cool. Then we have the main menu. I kind of want to say that I'm proud of the main menu, but also it took way too much time. I could have spent the time for making this settings menu on so many different things. But yeah, I still made it, and I guess it is really useful for some people because I have heard that the game was really I don't want to say laggy. The FPS was really low, and I hope that these settings can actually make it a more fun experience for you, because then it actually reaches a higher FPS. The mouse sensitivity wasn't adjustable at first. That is one of the kind of post-gem updates that I did, because I don't know, my DPI is really low, and I know some people have higher DPI. So the default, I do air quotations, but that doesn't work without a camera. Great. The default mouse sensitivity was really high for some people, so they can just tone it down, or if people really want a nauseating experience, they can move it all the way up. But that's the main menu. There's a little diorama in this scene, which if you press, if the game starts, the diorama gets placed. So there we go. So this is a really small island that just gets placed for this main menu, which basically uses the same principles as the actual world. Wow. So I guess that's it. I have covered all of the things in the game, and it's moving, great. That's all of the things that are included in this game. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to join the Discord or ask me on Twitter. If people have whatever question, I am willing to answer them. I want to go as deep into the subject as I can, or as far as you want. If you aren't really experienced with Unity, I really want to try to explain stuff in your level, on your level, because if more people know how to generate stuff procedurally, then yeah, I just really like procedural stuff, so if you haven't noticed. So yeah, I really want people to do more with procedural content, because I think it is the future for game development, but I know that opinion is not... yeah, some people don't share the same opinion. Yeah, so that's the end of this video. I hope you guys liked it. Feel free to join the Discord, follow me on Twitter, follow myself on Twitter, which is Casual Dutchman, and then I hope to see you all there, and I hope you take care. Bye.